Hi, hello everyone. Dawn Epting here. Thank you guys so much as always for watching. I wanted to come and talk from the topic, it's happening now, or it's all happening now. And hopefully by the end of this video, we'll all be reminded that our prosperity, our deliverance, our healing, our sound relationships are a done deal. Feel free, if you are watching on YouTube, to hit the subscribe button below this video and to hit the bell underneath to receive notifications for future videos. But thank you, whatever platform you're watching on. So I wanted to actually start by quoting Mark 9:23, and it says, I have it written here, all things are possible to him that believes. Simply, all things, literally all things are possible to him that believes. And I also wanted to read from my notes that I've written here, a quote, and it says, whatever your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Whatever your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. And that is from Napoleon Hill in his book, Think and Grow Rich, which many of you, I'm sure, know is a classic. So whatever your mind can conceive, from being financially, abundant to, struggling financially, or I should say from struggling financially to being financially abundant, or from being in health that's not the best to having soundness in your body, whatever your mind can conceive and also believe, it can achieve. So I've written 5 points down here, and I wanted to tackle them in terms of us recognizing that it's all happening now, that everything has been accomplished, finished, and is a done deal. So number one, I said we have to decide what we want. Decide what you want. It is your choice. It's not necessarily God's choice. It's your choice, because God has given you his divine imagination. God has given you his divine imagination to the point that your desires are God's desires are your desires. So a lot of times when we're faced with perceived lack in our life, we want to ask the question, what is God's will? Is this me? Is this God? What are the desires of your heart? They've been placed there for a reason. And the next thing we often do is we try to ascertain whether we're worthy. You are worthy by virtue of being a being on this earth, an eternal being on this earth. You are worthy. You've always been worthy, and you will always be worthy. So you're worthy, whether it's a luxurious house that you desire, or whether it is, great friendships or a great relationship. You are worthy now. So decide what it is that you want, knowing that those desires have been placed there by God, and knowing that you are worthy. That's the first point. Number two, I've written here, realize that if you can conceive it, it already exists now. The very fact that you desire it means that it's a done deal. It exists now. It exists now. And so I want to kind of get into that a little bit. All possibilities exist now. I'm sure a lot of you, whether you're whatever teaching you listen to, whatever teachers, whether it's Joe Dispenza or Greg Bratton or, just various teachers now are talking about quantum physics, the quantum realm, and everything being available, whether we're talking scientifically or spiritually, in this divine matrix, in this quantum field, that spiritual realm, with God. All things literally exist. Like I said earlier, whether it is, if you can conceive of yourself being struggling, that's always what you experience, or whether you can conceive of yourself being abundant financially, and every possibility in between those two opposites. It exists now. It exists now. So if you can conceive it, that means it's already in existence. What we give our attention to grows. What we give our attention to grows, and we have to realize that. And I wanted to talk for a moment about the double slit experiment in physics. Many of you have probably heard of it, and many of you are probably familiar with what it is. I would encourage you, if you're interested to learn about it, to look it up, to do a Google search or look it up on YouTube. There are a lot of videos on it. The double slit experiment and the observer effect. And I'll try to explain it as I understand it, as simply, as easily as I can. So let's say, for instance, there was an experiment done. Let's say that this is screen 1 of the first screen where my watch is, and this is screen 2. So essentially, if light or subatomic matter goes through 2 vertical slits, let's say that there are 2 separate vertical slits, onto the second screen, which is blank, what you would expect to see is that it would hit the second screen in the form of 2 vertical slits. But in the double slit experiment, what they found is when matter went through, or light went through this first screen, it hit the second screen in more vertical lines than just 2 vertical slits, which suggested to physicists and renowned scientists that matter and light quanta, the smallest particles of matter and light, essentially act as a wave, not as a solid particle, but as a wave. But what was interesting about the double slit experiment is when they put a detector behind or in front of the first screen and observed the light or matter being shot through the first screen, what they found was when the detector was there and someone was looking, it did behave with just 2 vertical slits. But when no one was looking, again, it behaved with that interference pattern that looked like a wave. So what does this mean? We create our reality. What we observe becomes. When there is someone observing, when someone is present, when there is consciousness present, then it becomes what we think it will become. But when no one is observing, with that wave pattern, all things are possible. It can become anything. It can take any form. But when someone is looking, when we give our attention to it, it behaves in the manner that we would expect. So I wrote here, what we give our attention to creates our reality. Becomes solid. It's those particles. It's those 2 lines. And if we don't give attention to it, it's infinite possibilities. So it's that wave pattern. So number 1, we decide what we want. Number 2, we realize that if we can conceive it, if we can conceive it, it already exists. Number 3, align your thoughts with what you want. So often we desire something, whether it's, great health or a great marriage, but we're still thinking about the lack. We're still thinking about the sickness in our body. We're still thinking about, the argument that we just had with our spouse yesterday. We have to align our thoughts to what we want, not what we don't want. I think as human beings, often what we do is we align our thoughts to what we don't want in an attempt to get what we do want. Let me repeat that. So often as human beings, we align our thoughts to what we don't want in an attempt to get what we do want. So for instance, we might want financial abundance and we'll say, well, I'm broke. I've always been broke. I've always struggled. This always happens. Anytime I get money, something happens, or if we want a great relationship, this always happens. I always get left. I'm always the one giving the most in the relationship. I'm always the one, why do nice guys finish last, or why do nice girls finish last? So what we're giving our attention to essentially is what we don't want instead of what we want. So we have to be conscious of our thoughts, that our thoughts are things, they are creating our reality, and we want to give our attention and focus our thoughts on what we actually do want. So if we want to, be financially abundant, we have to think financially abundant. We have to think wealth. We have to think in ways that align with wealth. So number 3, align your thoughts with what you desire. Don't just decide, number 1, what you want. And number 2, realize that if you can conceive it, it already exists. Align our thoughts to what we want. Number 4, align your emotions with it. Align your emotions with it. So once we align our brain, our thoughts, we have to align our heart, our emotions, and practice those elevated emotions of joy, of peace, of gratitude, of love. Align our emotions. So if we are, again, desiring money and believing for that and thinking along those lines, what would it feel like? It would feel like freedom, right? To be financially abundant. That's what it would feel. You would feel free, unhindered, light, unimpeded, So, and if, for instance, if you're, desiring health, realize, of course, that it already exists, that all possibilities in the spiritual realm already exists. There is a version of you that exists that is in perfect health. But what would you feel? You would feel vibrant. You would feel light. You would feel maybe even youthful. So align your emotions with your desire. That's number 4. And number 5, occupy that state. Occupy that state. What do I mean by that? Occupy that state. It means to stay there. Don't just feel it for a day, and then if you don't see anything happening immediately, you're convinced because you can't perceive it, which often you can't with your 5 physical senses, what you can see, hear, taste, touch, or smell. Then you get back to, oh, I'm not, I always struggle with health, or I'm always broke. No, occupy that state. Where you occupy, or where you live, for that lack of a better word, or where you reside, is what will harden into facts in your reality. So regardless of what it looks like in the natural realm, see yourself. If you're wanting financial or abundance, or believing that, you want to experience it in the outer realm, external realm, because of course, what's going on the inside of us always projects into our external environment. So what would you do? On the inside, you would think thoughts of wealth. You would feel the emotions of freedom, of gratitude for being wealthy. You might even occupy a state where every night you drift off, or every morning you wake up on a yacht, for instance, if that's something that would be associated with your wealthy state. And you would feel the wind of the ocean, on your face. You would smell the salt water, you would walk the length of the yacht, you would see your friends maybe there on the yacht with you, having a great time, actually feel yourself with the attire, the outfit that you would like to wear. If it's a certain outfit, you would just feel it. You would occupy that state. You don't jump in and out. You occupy that state where it's so real to you on the inside. It doesn't matter if it ever shows up on the outside, but it will show up on the outside when it's more real to you on the inside. And it doesn't matter if it shows up on the outside. So a good example of this is Neville Goddard's story about Barbados. And many of you have probably heard of the inspirational teacher Neville Goddard. So years ago, I believe it was during the Depression, he wanted to go to Barbados, and so he told his friend Abdullah, which was his mentor, I want to go to Barbados. And so his friend said, you are in Barbados and you went first class. So he got the gist of it. His friend was telling him to think along those lines, to feel those emotions, and that as he did, it would come to fruition in the outer realm. So a couple of weeks passed, nothing happened, or that's what he thought. He didn't perceive it in 3D reality in the outer realm. So he went back to his friend and he said, you know, nothing has happened. I've been thinking about Barbados. I've been trying to picture myself there. Nothing has happened. And his friend got angry with him and he said, you are in Barbados and you went first class, and he slammed the door on him. So eventually he persisted. Neville Goddard occupied this state, and his brother sent him a letter and said, hey, you know, we want the whole family to be together. I think it was during the holidays. He said, here's a first class ticket to Barbados. We'll all be, you know, in Barbados. Or here's a ticket to Barbados. We'll all be in Barbados, and, you know, we want you to come. So he sent him the ticket, and eventually, not only did he go to Barbados, but he went to Barbados first class as he had been picturing. So we have to occupy the state until it becomes such a firm conviction where we know that we know that we know that we know, and we're fully persuaded that it is a done deal. You know, it's no different than if you get up in the morning and you're going to your job, or you're going to a friend's house, or you just know it's a done deal. You don't question it. You don't doubt it. You know, you're fully persuaded. You're convinced. There's a firm conviction. So number one, you know, we decide what we want. Number two, we realize that if we can conceive it, it already exists. Number three, we align our thoughts with our desire. Number four, we align our emotions with our desire. And number five, we occupy that state. So thank you guys so much for watching. It's been so great to spend time with you. I miss you guys. Feel free to look below this video to see how you can get involved with some of the things I'm doing. And I love hearing your comments, and they're an encouragement to others. So feel free to share your comments as well. Until we see each other again, you guys have a great one. Bye-bye.